Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to have you here for our webinar, How to Automate Your Stitch in Mistika Workflows. This session is designed for VR content creators ready to take their stitching process to the next level by integrating Mistika Workflows. So you're already familiar with crafting high-quality stitches, and now it's time to learn how to automate and optimize that process to save time and boost consistency across your VR projects. So today, we will introduce a brand new feature called the VR input bunches in Mistika Workflows. So Mistika Workflows is a powerful tool that can simplify and streamline your stitching automation even further, making your workflow smarter and more efficient. So my colleagues, Adrian and Jesus, today will walk you through the fundamentals of setting up the automation. They will share tips and answer your questions live, as I mentioned. So you can post all your questions in the Q&A box down below, and we will answer them after the presentation. Okay, I think we're all in the webinar. Okay, I think Adrian, you can take it from here if you want.
Okay, so give me a second. I will share the screen so we can start here. There we go. Okay, so you should see my screen now. All right. Okay, so welcome everyone to this presentation about Mistika Workflows and in combination with Mistika VR and Mistika Boutique. During this presentation, we are going to basically learn how to use Mistika Workflows for automating the stitching of our VR content. In order to show how this works, I have here prepared a few folders with material, etc. I will explain how those are basically structured, so we will understand the logic behind it. The main engine or the main tool that we're going to use for this workflow is going to be Mistika Workflows, because it's the one that basically manages the automation. But of course, we will need as well Mistika VR and Mistika Boutique to build the templates that we need for stitching the content, right? So just give me a second. I'm basically finishing the installation there, and basically the media that I have that I'm going to use in here is media from Candao Obsidian. To be honest, you can use any kind of rig, any kind of footage. Here we have like 3 shots. I'm going to use those 3 shots as an example, and those 3 shots are basically contains the different files for making the stitch. This is going to be really critical to have some kind of a structure that we can use or rule that we can use for automating the stitching. Of course, if we are basically dealing with multiple cameras and they are not organized in any way, etc., automating anything in those scenarios is tricky. So we need to be a bit organized in order to automate the process. So let me basically jump into Mistika VR and Mistika Workflows. So I will start opening Mistika VR, and then I will show how to make the same thing, the same process with Mistika Boutique. So let me open here the project, and I will open as well Mistika Workflows, because this is going to be the main engine for our automation. Okay, so our process starts again in Mistika VR or Mistika Boutique, because we need to design somehow a template for automating the process. So there are many ways to create a template in Mistika VR or Mistika Boutique. I mean, regarding the geometry alignment. So I will start by basically bringing here my media that I'm going to use as a reference. So I basically drag and drop those shots in here in Mistika VR. I just need basically to use one of those shots as a reference for creating the template. I don't need to stitch all the content, because again, I'm going to automate the stitching with the rest of the shots using Mistika Workflows. I will talk about Mistika Workflows a bit later. Is this software that we have in here? But for the moment, I will start talking about what you probably already know, which is Mistika VR. Okay, so I have here this Candle footage from this Obsidian Candle footage. So what I'm going to do in here is stitching the content in a very basic way. I'm not going to focus on aligning the geometry too much, or fixing the color or things like that, because I can do all those processes later in Mistika Workflows. I just need a starting point to stitch the content. At this moment, I don't have any kind of any preset apply or anything. So that's the thing that I'm going to do in here. So I'm going to basically load the preset for this camera. So go to load preset, go to Candau Obsidian, which is this resolution here, and just click, and there you go. This is basically the, as you probably know, just positioning the cameras in the right place in the 360 space. I'm going to decrease the feather because this preset has a feather of 100. I normally work in between 20 and 30 as much, or even between 10 and 30. So I'm going to put 20 just to be a bit safe. And then I'm going to basically enable the optical flow for this shot, right? Obviously, this is not a good stitching. As you can see, we have, problems everywhere, blur image. We have optical flow artifacts everywhere because we haven't fixed the geometry or anything. We have just applied the preset as it is and just enabled the optical flow. As a recommendation, I would recommend to basically get the best geometry possible from Mistika VR before automating the stitching. In this particular case, I'm not doing that because I want to show you the power, the capability of Mistika Workflows, stitching the content automatically. But the best approach will be to fix all those geometry issues as in a good way, and then use that template that we're building here to automate the stitching in Mistika Workflows. So, okay, so let's say that we have our preset, the optical flow is enabled. Now we want to transform this stitching into a template. So in order to do that, we need to go to File, Options, and there is an option here called Batch Manager. You probably haven't used this option in your pipeline. And it makes sense that you haven't used it because this function is basically focused more on connecting Mistika VR with render farms, or it was originally designed to connect Mistika VR with render farms. So as long as you deal with, a normal number of files, you probably don't need to use a render farm, but the option was for that. But as part of these render farms integrations, we connect Mistika VR with Mistika Workflows because Mistika Workflows can work as well as a render farm for Mistika VR. So if we click here in Configure, there are multiple options that we have. And one of those options is called Send R&D Files to Mistika Workflows Watcher Node. All right. So this basically is another way to say just create an R&D file with the media that we're stitching here. So at this point, you will ask, okay, what is an R&D file? So an R&D file is basically a metadata file that contains all the geometry and all the alignments and everything that we have done. Let me close it for a second. Everything that we have done in here for this stitching is a metadata file that contains all that information plus the file paths to the raw media that we're using for stitching and even the render settings for render.content. So it's like a metadata package that contains everything that we have done with a specific shot before rendering that shot into a movie or a sequence or whatever format we select. So we're going to create that R&D file, and this R&D file is going to act as a template for Mistika Workflows. So I'm going to click again in Configure, just double click on this option, and this basically will pop up this window just to select in which folder we want to save those R&D files. So in this particular case, I have a folder here called VR Automation, and I'm going to basically save them directly in there. So I click and apply, and that's it. We have finished the configuration part with that setting. Now we need to define to which format we want to render the results in Mistika Workflow. So we go to File, Render, and here we're going to define the render settings as we normally do in Mistika VR. So we define the type of the format, the codec. I want to basically define as well the gamut and the gamma, stereo if we want the stereo. I'm not using stereo here just to render a bit faster, but of course it makes sense to enable stereo and it will work perfectly fine. And then in here, we're going to basically define the name of that template. In my particular case, I'm going to call it Candau template. So I click in Add to Render Queue. And well, I had one already. I'm going to overwrite it. There you go. And this only takes a few seconds because I'm not rendering anything. I'm just creating that metadata file. So if I now navigate to the folder of my files, I will have now a new R&D file called Candau template. As you can see, I have one created as well for Canon dual fisheye. I will talk about how to make this automation with VR 180 as well. But we start first with Candau template. All right. So this is my R&D file. Right. So this is all I need to do with Mistika VR. I create a template. I save this template as an R&D file. Now I can just jump into Mistika Workflows. So I guess Mistika Workflows is a new product for you guys, and this is maybe the first time you see it. So I will explain a little bit the concept of Mistika Workflows, and then I will build a workflow for automating the stitching. So Mistika Workflows is an automation tool. It allows you to automate any kind of process. We're talking during this webinar about a stitching process, but to be honest, this can be used for your renders, for creating, for example, proxy files, for moving, copying media into different locations, uploading or downloading content from different platforms. So it can be used for really, really anything. The interface is quite simple to follow. Here we have a big canvas in the center, and we build our workflows in there. This canvas is basically a node graph editor, so the workflows are going to be built as a node tree. And those nodes and those functionalities that we can use for creating our workflows are the ones that we have listed here in inputs, tasks, and outputs. As you can see, the list of functions is quite huge at this moment because in every single new version we're adding more and more functionality. And well, we can see that Mistika Workflows is already integrated with many third-party applications that can be really useful for you guys for orchestrating your pipeline. For example, we have Aspera already integrated. We have Google Drive, OneDrive, Object Matrix. We have Frame.io. We have communication systems like Slack, WhatsApp, integration with AI tools like Pixel AI for upscaling footage that can be really interesting for VR content. Topaz AI is coming as well. We have an integration with Topaz AI that will be available soon in Mistika Workflows. So we have integrated Mistika Workflows with many, many external platforms out there to orchestrate your pipeline. So in order to show you the logic of Mistika Workflow, the concept of it, I'm going to build a really simple workflow before jumping into the automation stitching workflow. So let's say that we want to make a workflow about rendering content. Like we want to use a workflow for automatically transcode media into different formats. So let's say that we have a watch folder as an input. Okay, so this watch folder is going to be the input of my workflow, and it's going to be as well the trigger for my workflow. So every time that I copy something in the folder that I define for this watch folder, I have here the file path to define the location of this watch folder. So every time that I copy or move something into that watch folder, Mistika Workflows will be triggered and we will do something automatically. So let's say that I want to render that content into progress, right? And I want to create a lower quality version in H265, like a proxy version of those files. So I can just put like H265 as a secondary output, right? We of course has all the settings for those transcodings. We can change the codec, the resolution, the frame rate, etc. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but you can basically control the transcodings in every single aspect. And then let's say that I want to upload those contents to different platforms or send those files to different through different platforms. So let's say that, for example, for those progress files, I want to upload them using I don't know, a Google Drive folder, whatever. Okay. And maybe these H265, I want to send them to Vimeo or YouTube. I don't know. We can put here YouTube just as a show as another integration. Okay. Of course, we have more professional platforms, like for example, like as I said, like Aspera or Frame.io or things like that, right? So for example, if we want to upload to Frame.io, we have as well Frame.io integrated. So as you can see, we have many, many platforms out there that we can use to, in this case, send those contents, right? And of course, we can automate as well the notification system. So let's say that I want to get an email or send an email once those files, those progress files has been sent, for example, through Frame.io. So we can just connect here an email node. And with these yellow triangles, we can define the order of the process. So we can say, okay, after sending the contents to Frame.io, send an email. So basically this system will send an email. You have here the body to basically write your email. And you can write in here like all the files are in Frame.io, for example, or something like that. And this email will be sent after uploading the content to Frame.io. We can even build the body of the emails or of the body of our messages in a more dynamic way. So we can, for example, connect this email to the progress node to basically get the list of files from this progress node, and we can basically put that list of files in the body of my email. So in that way, we can send emails with more information, with more specific information about the files that has been sent to Frame.io or upload to Frame.io. And we can use the same system here for this second branch of my workflow, but using, for example, Slack or even WhatsApp. So we can just put like a WhatsApp message, for example, and we can just say, okay, send a WhatsApp after uploading the content to YouTube, for example, So as you can see, building workflows is quite simple. We basically put nodes, every single task or functionality is a box, a color box in here, and you can connect those boxes to basically replicate the pipeline that you want to automate. And here the input again is a trigger. So every time that we copy something here, we will basically do all those tasks automatically. Okay. The whole system is very visual, and we try always to remove human mistake. So, for example, on top of those nodes, you will see a color dot. If the color dot is in green, that means that the node is ready to be used. So you will be able to use it, obviously. But if the color dot is in orange, that means that something is missing there. You need to configure something. I need to have all the nodes in green in order to add this workflow to my render queue in here. And that's the way we have for removing human mistakes before processing this workflow. So we need to be sure that all the nodes are in green in order to be used them. We have here a validation inspector. So if we click on one of those nodes, for example, the Frame.io that is in orange, it will tell me exactly what is missing in that node. So I just need to change those things in order to use it properly. All right. So this is like a quick overview of the interface. As you can see, it's quite simple, it's very visual, and the whole system is letting you know what is going on with every single node in your workflow. All right. So with this idea in mind, we're going to build a new workflow, but in this case for automating the stitching. So I'm going to start from the scratch, new. And what I'm going to do is basically drag and drop the template that I built before. So this is the Candout template. So I drag and drop this template. And here I have a template with the different inputs for my different cameras. Basically, I have the same number of inputs here is basically the number of cameras that I need for stitching this content. I can just use, as you can see, the name of those cameras is the one that of the files that I use for creating this template. But if you want to have like a more agnostic view of this node, we can just disable the username, and then it will show me input 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So 6 cameras. I have 6 cameras for this template. All right, and my footage, if I go to my folder, if I go here to my Obsidian folder, I have 3 shots. So I can just basically drag and drop this Obsidian folder here. And I have these 3 shots that I want to stitch automatically. Now, the problem is, how can I connect this folder, which contains multiple shots, with this template here and map the different files to the right input of the template? Well, in order to do that, we have created a new node called VR input bunches. So the VR input bunches is a node that basically allows me to pack all the different cameras that are involved in one shot. So for example, if the shot 1 has all this media, basically this node group all that media as one entity, as one group, and we are able to map that group into the different inputs of my template. So the first thing I need to do in here, well, first connect it, obviously, to my input. And here is basically define the number of cameras of my rig, which in this particular case is 6, right? And then here in the media naming, we have support for different cameras. As you can see, we have GoPro rigs, Freedom 360, Trinity, Meta 3, and Meta 4 is the same. iSugar, Candout Obsidian, which is the one that I'm going to use. We have Insta360. So we have multiple presets for different cameras, because every single camera, every single commercial camera names the files in a different way. And that's the tricky part of this whole workflow, to have a preset for your camera here. That's not a big deal, guys. If you are working with a camera that is not already supported in the VR input bunches, just let us know and we will implement it, because normally it doesn't take too much. But again, the ruling here is be consistent with the naming. We know in this particular case, we're working with Candout Obsidian, so we know the name is going to be consistent through all the shots. So in this particular case, I will select the Candout Obsidian option. So Candout Obsidian, and then I have here the 6 cameras. I just need to connect those to the template. As simple as that. Okay. So it's, as you can see, it's very similar to Mistika VR in the way that you select the preset for the camera that you're using. In Mistika VR was for basically creating the stitching. In this particular case, more for grouping the cameras in group of medias that I can map later into the template. All right. So this is the first step. But the problem here is the calibration, as we have seen in here, is not really good because we haven't put too much effort calibrating the shot in Mistika VR. Again, the best thing will be to, spend a bit of time in Mistika VR getting the best possible geometry. But in this particular case, to go faster, I'm going to basically calibrate on the fly those shots using Mistika Workflows. So we have different ways to calibrate my media. We have the stitch refiner. That's one of the options. And we have the auto calibrate. We have these two options. All right, so these two options are the same options that we have in Mistika VR. The stitch refiner basically have like 3 parameters: match geometry, match color, and frame offset. This match geometry is basically like going into Mistika VR and clicking in improve offsets and improve angles. We have combined both parameters in one in Mistika Workflow, but is exactly like clicking in those two options. And in fact, you can just define how many times you can click or you want to click in those options, because as you probably know, those two features allows you to click on them multiple times to get the best possible geometry. So in here you can define how many times you want to click on those. Normally once is enough, but anyway, if you need more, you can just put more. Same thing with the match color. So this match color option is the same match color option that we have in here. So we can just click in match color and we can define how many times we want to click in match color to match the color of the different cameras. And then we can just define in which frame we want to use as a reference to basically match the geometry and match the color, because as you know, normally the first frame is not the best candidate for matching the geometry or the color of my shots, because I don't know, maybe you are placing the camera in the tripod, so you are breaking the minimum distance and you don't have too much detail to calibrate the geometry and the color. So you can define another frame to calibrate your shots. So this is the first approach. The second approach, which is the one that I'm going to use in here, is the auto-calibrate functionality, which is the same auto-calibrate function that we have here. So here, if we open this menu, we have the mode, VR 360, VR 180, and the different settings. So we have the same settings in Mistika Workflows. So we have here the 180 and the 360. So we can just define whatever option we want to use, right? Okay, so in this particular case, we're working in mode 360, in 360 mode. So I'm going to use that one. In case that your shots are moving, you can as well stabilize your shots automatically. So we have the stabilization option in here. And this node basically has the same settings that you have in here in the stabilize menu there. So again, we are basically moving features from Mistika VR into Mistika Workflows to automate the stitching. In this particular case, my shots are static. I don't need to stabilize anything. So I will basically delete this node. But just to let you know that if you don't need to stabilize the shot, you can just connect it and that's it, all right? All right, so the last step obviously is render the result. So in order to render this group of, this template plus calibration node, I just need to go and add this Mistika render node in here. So the Mistika render node is basically like calling the Mistika render engine to process this file and make the stitch. In this particular case, we will define the output file, and I'm going to basically save this into, let me search for the folder. This was VR automation and delivery, okay? So I basically will use that folder for my deliveries. And that's it. That's basically the workflow. Again, just to go from the beginning to the end, we have the input with my folder where I have all my media. This could be a simple folder. This can be a watch folder. This can be even a JSON file, a database, a CSV file. There are many ways to input media into Mistika Workflows. But just to go to the simple notes, basically we have folders and watch folders. You can use both to make this process. Probably folder it makes more sense because I guess that you already have your media organized in your storage. So from here we basically group that media per camera, per shot, and then we basically connect those different images to the template, calibrate the template, and render the result. From here, you can continue the workflow, obviously. I'm not going to do it in this presentation, but you can continue the workflow. For example, if this is going to be your master version, again, you can create like an H.264 or H.265 version of it. After the master version, you can probably upload the master version to an FTP, for example, just to show other integrations and other functionalities. And maybe this H.265 can be sent through Dropbox to your final customer or whatever, just to review the content, right? So you can continue the workflow in many, many ways. That's up to you. Mistika Workflow is completely flexible here. So you can continue the workflow to adapt it to your needs. In this particular case, we're going to basically stay with the basic workflow. And now, as you can see, all the nodes are in green. So I'm able to add it to my render queue. Here's the render queue, and now I can just press play, and the process will start. As you can see now, Mistika Workflow is basically replacing the contents in my template with every new shot, and after that, it will jump into the auto-calibrate functionality, and then it will do the Mistika render. When a workflow is processed here in the render queue, we have all the information here in the render log. We have a couple of warnings here. Those are not really important. It's an internal thing. In fact, we will probably remove those from the release version. But as you can see now, for example, it's telling me that it's basically rendering the auto calibrate functionality. So as you can see, it was like processing the folder, the VR input punches, the R&D file, and now it's doing the auto calibrate, which is the process that will take a bit longer. But it's basically explaining you in every single step what is going on in your workflow. In order to not waste your time, I have here a backup here that I did already, just to review the result of those files. These are the result of a previous execution of this same workflow. There is something that I didn't mention before, which is that you can save the R&D files. We will wait until it's finished. You can save the new R&D files that we create in this workflow in another location. I will talk about that later because it's more linked to Mistika Boutique. But this is a really interesting feature of Mistika Workflows and Mistika VR. So I'm going to open Boutique just to review the content of those shots that I have already stitched, just to show you that the result looks quite fantastic and it works really well because again we're using the same calibration features that we have in Mistika VR. So let me open second Mistika Boutique and I will drop in there the files that I have already rendered in a previous execution. Okay, so I have here my delivery folder, drag and drop, just import and load, and those are the three files. And those three files has been processed by using Mistika Workflows. You will see the result in a few minutes because the render will start in a few minutes. But as you can see, basically we have here, let me disable this menu. This is basically the shot that is already stitched. As you can see, there is no artifacts or anything. The calibration was done using Mistika Workflows. And the beauty is that it was done completely automatically. I didn't have to go shot by shot stitching that content. I just create a template using this particular shot, and then I apply that template with all the calibration into the rest of the shots of my image, right? So we go to another frame, and there you go. This is the result. So that looks quite well. Of course, this can be applied, this process can be applied with Mistika VR or Mistika Boutique. So in order to create a template in Mistika Boutique, just in case you are using it, basically the process is quite similar. All we need to do is to bring, one shot as an example. So let's bring again the shot one. Okay. All right. We basically put this in vertical to create the stitching of that shot that we are going to use as a template. And here we just need to go to effects and just load the VR stitch effect because, well, Mistika Boutique has a lot of functionalities, a lot of effects, and the stitching part is only a small part of Mistika Boutique, which is only one effect in here. So we go here to the VR stitch. I need to consider open all my files as input, keeping the input resolution. So I will have that propagated. Okay, and now all I need to do is again load the preset for this camera, which is again go into the Candao, Obsidian, just load the same preset. Again, I can just go to the option, reduce the feather. The parameters are exactly the same, just displayed in a different way because the interface is different. But other than that, it's just the same. So I can enable the optical flow in here, and that's it. Now this is the same calibration that I did in Mistika VR, but in Mistika Boutique. And in order to save this template, I basically select the area that I want to use as a template, which is this shot. Put the edit marks, go to the output, and here I can just define the different settings for the render as I did in Mistika VR. So QuickTime Movie, ProRes. Here I can just name it Candao template Boutique, for example. And here we have the same add to render queue option. With the same with this icon here, I can define the folder where I want to save those R&Ds. It's the same panel, is the same window that I have in Mistika VR. So there is no lost in here. It works in the same way. So we select the folder and we click in add to render queue. And this will basically create a new template, but in this case, this template has been created by Mistika Boutique. If I go now to my VR automation, I have here the Countdown template boutique. The only difference is that Mistika Boutique adds extra information in the naming here by using the input name of the file, but you can clean it, because if you are going to use it as a template, you probably don't need this. And if you want to keep the name of the template clean, that's totally fine. You can rename it in the way that you want. It won't affect the render or anything else. Okay. All right, so this is how you basically make the template in Mistika Boutique. If we go here to the process, now we can see that the render has started, and we have here the delivery now is creating the contents. It will take only a few minutes to make all the deliveries. Of course, it will depend on the length of the shots and the amount of cameras you use. But the process is as fast as you have as it is in Mistika VR or Mistika Boutique, because we are using the same engine. Finally, one of the most important new features of this workflow, especially if you are using Boutique, because this feature is not available yet in Mistika VR, but we're probably implemented soon, is that when you basically run this workflow in Mistika Workflows, as you can see here, I have my templates. I created my templates, and here there are new 3 templates or new 3 R&Ds that has been created by Mistika Workflows. These 3 R&Ds are basically 1 R&D per shot. So if you remember correctly, we had like 3 shots in here. So 3 new R&Ds have been created. The beauty of these 3 R&Ds is that it contains all the calibration that Mistika Workflows has done. So for example, let's say that you don't like the the result of the automatic stitching of Mistika Workflows, but it can be used as a starting point for refining the stitching, right? So you don't want to start from the scratch. You want to use the result of Mistika Workflows as a starting point. Well, you can just take one of those R&D files, go to Mistika Boutique. Let's drop it in here, and just drag and drop that R&D file in here in your template. And what you have in here is a group. And if you ungroup this element, what you have is basically the VR stitch with all the raw media and all the calibration that Mistika Workflows has done with this shot, applying the optical flow, the auto calibrate, everything. As you can see, it looks really good because the calibration works really well with these shots. But yeah, all the job that Mistika Workflows has done can be brought directly here into Mistika Boutique in a non-destructive way. So if you want to refine the stitching here, you will have access to all the parameters and all the settings, everything you need in here to refine the stitching for that particular shot. So chances are that, for example, if you are stitching, I don't know, hundreds of shots, maybe 80, 90% will work perfectly fine if the camera is well calibrated. Maybe with a 10% of the shots, you need to make some kind of quick refinement. And with Mistika Boutique, you have that option because you bring those R&Ds into Mistika Boutique and you can continue the job in here. Or maybe if you want to add some color grading on top or whatever, you can just continue the workflow adding the color grading, removing the tripod with the compositing functionalities of Mistika VR, of Mistika Boutique, sorry, etc., etc. So as you can see, the workflow is quite complete because it's a non-destructive workflow. You make your calibration and then you can bring back those R&D files, those calibrated shots into Mistika Boutique for continuing the job if you want. So yeah, this is an overview of the process. As you can see, is quite powerful because basically it removes a lot of effort from your side. You don't need to stitch shot by shot manually. Everything can be dealt or managed with Mistika Workflows, and you can just put your efforts on refining the stitching at the end of this process. Again, these Mistika Workflows can be combined, can be used in combination with Mistika Boutique or Mistika VR. Is the perfect tool for orchestrating your pipeline and orchestrating your stitching process as well, if you want. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We will try to answer everything. And I invite you to test it. Mistika Workflow is already available with not the auto calibrate. This is something that is coming in the next following weeks, but with the stitch refiner. So you can start playing with the stitch refiner and see the results by yourself, and you will be surprised, I think.